In the Gospel of Matthew, in chapter 2, we read, After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. In Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, For this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him. After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child and his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Magi from the east came to Jerusalem, and each of us has his images of them in our heads, of nativity plays and nativity scenes. These pictures, these images say there are exactly 3 of them, more precisely 3 men, and even more precisely 3 wise men or kings. And they followed the star from home. And now I look at the Bible text and notice some things are not stated there at all. Instead, it says something completely different. It does not say that there are kings or wise men. It says magi, magicians, wizards, astrologers. And it doesn't say that there are 3. There was only thought because it fits so well with the 3 gifts. Yes, it even doesn't say that there were only men. Magi from the east came to Jerusalem. Clearly, for a reader of that time, Gentiles, non-Jews, those from the nations, just like us today. Right at the beginning, Matthew clearly states, this message is for the whole world. The wise men have seen a star rise. And mind you, it's not yet moving. They saw it rise and read from the Holy Scriptures, the king will be born in Israel. And for them, of course, that means in Jerusalem. For where else but at the center of power should this happen? We know, of course, that it's precisely not this political power that God uses. But the Magi don't know that at that stage. They go straight to King Herod. He is frightened, a rival for power. And he in turn searches the scriptures for the place of birth. All the scribes and wise men he calls together agree it must be Bethlehem. And he sends out the Magi, tells them where they must go, but not without maliciously telling them, but afterwards come back to me, I want to worship the king too. The wise men set off in the direction of Bethlehem, and then, all of a sudden, the star starts to move. And the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them, until it stopped over the place where the child was. Now one may ask, why this way via Jerusalem? Couldn't the star have led them straight directly to Bethlehem? But this star is different from others. The star Matthew tells us about is not an astronomical star, but a theological star. Not a star that one could watch and prove, and thus everything would be proven. For a star itself proves nothing and disproves nothing. Matthew tells us about this star only because it tells the story of salvation. That star tells us salvation is not possible without Jerusalem, because Israel is and remains called to show the peoples of the world the way to God. And at the same time, Jerusalem is only a stopover for the Magi, for it is not about political power, but about God's coming into this world. The Magi, in any case, follow Herod's advice and the star. And they find the child and they fall on their knees and worship him. They bring him gifts, gold, a sign of wealth and power, frankincense, fragrant resin, sign of prayer and worship, perfect gifts for a Messiah, power and faith, expensive gifts, which is why the popular telling has made the Magi into kings. But then the third is myrrh, also a resin. Among others, this was used to anoint the deceased. Look, says Matthew, the life of Jesus, who already as a child has a king as his enemy, can only become a path of suffering. The gifts say, with Jesus, power and prayer and suffering belong together. This is not a contradiction, but a program from the early beginning. Worship and programmatic gifts. That's all Matthew tells us about the Magi. Just this one at the end. The Magi, of course, don't do what Herod wanted. They have a dream that tells them, do not pass over Jerusalem, and they return to the country by another route. The Magi, man or woman, whatever their number, disappear. In contrast to our ideas, Matthew leaves so much open. What in doing that, he invites us to ask, where are we in this story? We are the ones from the nations. We are the ones who have been promised that we will come to salvation through Jerusalem and Bethlehem. From our perspective, through Jesus the Jew, who opens the door to all who hope in God. We set out on our journey. Sometime, somewhere, a star has risen in our heart. A longing has grown. And we follow the star and that longing. Sometimes our path leads to the bright, shiny, fancy places, but the destination lies elsewhere. We have to understand that. Our star must set out again and again, and not stand still. Not the star and not ourselves. And then, all at once, we unexpectedly arrive at the one who stands by us in life and in death. We give him gifts, ourselves, our hope and fear and longing, and we are baptized with him in death and life. And then we return home again to everyday life, because we cannot remain at the manger. Not as kings and queens we return home, for king is only one, but transformed. That is how we wander through life. We meet God in the stable and in the kitchens, in the garden and in the church. We do not stop wandering, because we still have a star to follow. Amen.